Hi Asya, hi Diana. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for the invitation. Hi.
Asya, you're a curator and researcher from Ukraine, and Diana, we can put it like that, like activist and cultural manager.
From Ukraine as well.
From Ukraine as well. And I hope Belgrade are treating you well. You are participating. You are participating in a project which is going on right now in Belgrade. It's run by CZKD, the Center for Cultural Decontamination. So, in short, what it is about?
Well, I guess this was the gesture of solidarity from Central Cultural Decontamination, and we are very grateful for this gesture. The project is called Mediating Difficult Knowledge. And there are different parts of this project. The exhibition, which is now in Tzazakade, is a part of this project. The fact that Center invited us for artistic residency, this is also the part of the project, and another part of the project will go on February, and it will be another exhibition. But why I calling it the gesture of solidarity? Because we were invited here basically to, let's say, breathe in and breathe out. It's just to have some time to have some safe time, not only physically but also mentally.
Diana, is it helpful?
Yeah, of course. Because in Ukraine, you are nowadays totally in survival mode, and there is such a small space for artistic or research activities, because you have to mind your survival all over in Ukraine, and having this possibility to stay in Belgrade with no obligation to produce something. This is the best help and solidarity indeed, Vasha, from our partners and colleagues from CZKD, and we are very grateful indeed. And I'm happy that they've chosen us with me and Asya. And I would even add, Asya, that although we were not obliged to produce anything, that we still will do some artistic projects as a tandem.
Yes.
You never worked before, no?
We worked before under one of the exhibitions in Mistecki Arsenal in Kiev, and this is where we met. But originally Diana is from Mariupol, I'm from Kharkiv, and
we met in Kiev and now in Belgrade. That is how it works. But I'm originally, I would correct you, from Donetsk, and I was living in Mariupol for last 8 years. Now I'm displaced again.
Mm-hmm. Did you meet some nice people from Belgrade, from Serbia, some of your colleagues? Was it helpful to be in touch with them?
Yeah, of course.
It was very helpful to be in touch, but also this is, a very funny moment, because when you are here in such a very open and interesting artistic environment, you are actually starting to feel yourself kind of normal again, because one of the unspoken problems in Ukrainian cultural society now is that we all are kind of displaced. It is impossible to gather people around something. You will never be able to gather the same amount and the same people that you was able to gather at least 1 year ago or so. And for example, now when you are here in Belgrade and you see the opening of the exhibition and you see how people, meet each other, speak about different things, it feels so normal that for some reason you are mentally in this safe again space, but also it gives you a kind of very interesting feeling that this normality can be returned to our life also someday.
Belgrade, for me, I find similarities with Donetsk, my hometown, which I haven't been in for 8 years, or even 9, almost. With Kiev, with cultural centers of in Ukraine, like in terms of architecture, in terms of like dynamics of of the lifestyle, and of course this artistic community that we've drowned in. Was really inspiring to feel, because I really, just like Asya, we spoke about it, feel like in Kiev in normal, I don't know, spring, because now it feels like spring, not winter, like a year or two ago. And now of course it's not possible to have just the same vibe that we had 1-2 years ago, and usually,
of course
yes,
not, yeah.
because you cannot meet just people that you used to meet growing around the city, then just go somewhere to the bar, then to the opening, then there is a screening or performance. This is how Kiev felt. Kiev and probably Kharkiv as well. And
Yeah. I understand, because I was in Kiev and in Lvov, I'm not sure, like 10 years ago. And to me it was also very interesting because to some extent you can tell what are the similarities, and the language which I can personally understand quite well, I mean Ukrainian. This socialist heritage as well, orthodoxy, of course, stuff like that. But on the other hand, it was also, there are lots of differences. So if we speak on geopolitical terms, this is Southern Eastern Europe, Balkans, and you are coming from Eastern, so-called Eastern.
Geographically Eastern Europe.
Yeah. So I'm sure that people from culture, they to some extent they have a different kind of experience. I mean, before everything which is going on now, and I know that you've been, especially you, Asya, if I well understood, you were dealing with these issues like Central Europe, Eastern Europe culture, art, so on. What do you say about that? Is it hard, or how, whatever we put it, or interesting to work in these kind of terms and concepts?
It is more than interesting, because my friend described Eastern Europe many years ago as Eastern Europe as this geopolitical term. You mean like this? I mean like this wide east from Balkans to Baltics, as the only place in Europe where everything is still possible. So everything is still not decided, and this is a challenge, but this is like a huge bonus. This is why maybe I'm so interested in this place, or in this place on the map. But it is very interesting how you put this question, because I was fascinated by the idea of Eastern Europe when I was living in Ukraine, and I thought that I know everything about it. But as soon as I moved to Minsk, now it's not very politically correctly to speak about Belarus, but I was invited by beautiful gallery U in Minsk, who are now political refugees, and they are like refugees since the president elections. Since last president elections in Belarus, and I started to open for myself the artistic community in Belarus. I found out that it is 100% different from what I know from what I knew about Ukraine, and this is how I understood that what we call Eastern Europe is actually like around 20 totally different countries with totally different cultural scenes, with totally different values and needs of those cultures, and it is, and one of the ways why we are connected through something I would call like geopolitical expansion. So we are connected not because we want to be connected, even though we probably want to be connected, but the connection that we currently have was, let's say, put it on us by external hands. And for me, it was, for example, when I was in Belarus, for me it was very interesting to understand that the only one of the few things that we have in common, there are very few things, but what we know about each other is actually mediated by Russian culture. And I was like surprised. The funny story, we were trying, like many years after, in February 2022, before the invasion, we presented the project Secondary Archive Ukraine Belarus. So there is an online archive called Secondary Archive dedicated to female artists from Central and Eastern Europe, and we were doing the edition dedicated to Ukraine and Belarus. And we faced the problem which was impossible to solve. The problem,
such as,
the problem was like this. We were insisting that we want to write the Cyrillic names of Belarusian artists in Belarusian language. I mean, like with Belarusian way of pronunciation. So it's, for example, not Olga, but Volga, and so on and so on. And of course, we want to write Ukrainian names with the original Ukrainian transcription. And it was not a problem to transcript it all to Latin alphabet to English, but it was impossible, unsolvable problem to find out how to write in Ukrainian language Belarusian names and vice versa, because we don't have common rules of transcriptions of such a similar, like super neighbor countries, but no one ever faced this problem, you know. And it's like, what the simplest thing that you can do, you can just take Ukrainian name, translate it to Russian language, and this is how you can explain it in Belarus. So every time this even slightest possibility of the connection between the countries of Eastern Europe, ex-Soviet Union, whatever, was mediated through the dominant culture, and this was Russia.
I understand it quite well, because that's what we have here in our region. It's southeastern Europe, but if you look at Greece or Albania, Serbia, the situation is completely different, and you can find some similarities between the whole region. But then you have ex-Yugoslavia club, which excluded Albania and Greece. Then within Yugoslavia club, there are you can find the connection between Serbia, Croatia, and Bosnia, because we speak completely the same language. And it was not the case with Macedonia and Slovenian, because it differs to some extent. So I completely understand. And but when you said that your relationship or your those two neighboring countries, Belarus and Ukraine, were mediated by Russian culture, what does it mean exactly? Because for us, sometimes, of course, and vice versa, I'm sure, it's not easy always to understand the concept, the context. So what does it mean when you say it?
First of all, one of the first things that both we and Diana realized as soon as we came to Belgrade is that it would be totally wrong to compare, for example, Yugoslavia experience and experience of Soviet Union. Those are like totally different things, although a lot of things seems to be very, very the same, but they are not. And for example, example from Ukraine and Belarus, and also from art heritage of some other parts of ex-Soviet Union, for example, Moldova. In order to tell the story, the history of art, you need to use some certain categories, let's say. And the art heritage of what geographically is Eastern Europe, so Ukraine, Belarus, and Moldova, was colonized 2 times. First of all, it's in order to speak about it, you need to fit it to the categories of the Western European history of art, just because no one will ever understand what you're talking about.
Of course.
And at the same time, you need to fit all the local processes to the generally normalized history of Russian art. For example, this is the funny trick when curators from Western Europe are coming to Ukraine and trying to dig into the unknown history of, a conceptual poetry. They are trying to find Dmitry Prigov in Ukraine, but it's like there is no need. Honestly, there is no need to look for Dmitry Prigov in Ukraine. Just better understand what was happening there and why conceptual poetry wasn't such a big thing there. There was something else, because the needs of now we can speak about this in those terrible terms, but the needs of colony and the metropolia were totally different. And for example, it is also funny how you can see in Western European collections artists from Ukraine who are in these collections only because they were related to the Moscow art scene, because this was reachable for Western European collectors.
And I would say that they were attributed as Russian, not Soviet
Often,
or Russian.
not also, but not always, but often. Yeah, for sure.
And now this is only starting to de-attribute, like in Tate or in different.
Of course, because
more modern,
because this conflict we have of war, it brings a lot of things.
Exactly.
So of course, yeah.
So I would actually this talk can be very long and very interesting because of this is something we are now researching with all our lives, like this decoloniality process. Because indeed, all the former Soviet republics, they knew only one language, Russian. Which was similar to all of us. I will say us because I was born in Soviet Union and lived there for not happy 11 years. And in coming back to this Eastern Europe, I just remembered how just recently I was fighting for not on some summit, some conference in Europe where I come sometimes from Ukraine. I was fighting to not put all these countries of Eastern region, страни країни східного партнерства in Ukrainian, countries of Eastern Partnership. That's it. So this is how mostly the funds, the big donors who fund cultural projects, and not only cultural, also democratic, and so on and so on. For many years, they were putting us in one club, Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine. These were countries of Eastern Partnership. Sometimes there is like Black Sea Trust, Black Sea Black Sea area, and so on, where comes also Georgia and Moldova, but mostly Eastern Partnership countries. And this is just the indicator that we still have so much work to do to just subjectivize ourselves,
and to show that it's not that the context differs totally a lot. The cultural scene, the cultural system differs a lot. I completely understand. As I already said, we have the same thing here in our region. But you also mentioned socialist heritage of Eastern Europe. So what do you think? What's your impression in Ukraine? How people relate to this socialist heritage? Because
you mean Soviet heritage?
Because in ex-Yugoslavia, and if we speak about Serbia, I think that it's very hard to find the right balance, proper balance, and to have a critical approach to this history. which Yugoslavia, it's an important project for everybody here because it lasted quite long. And and it's hard to relate and to be critical about it in a good way, because I see that people think you can find two groups of people. It's either very pro-Yugoslavia or very against Yugoslavia. So that's why, as I said, it's hard to make a balance, to find the right balance, and to take something which was good from this period of history. So what do you say about, how do you refer to Soviet Union?
In Ukraine?
Yeah. Is it the same, or is it more negative, or what's your impression?
It's absolutely not the same as here. The memory about Yugoslavia.
I know, of course.
And of course, we mostly try our best to go as further from anything Soviet, because it was the period of colonization, it was the period of occupation, but that's how it was. And of course, there is always some group of nostalgic people. Mostly, it is some elderly who just.
But what they say about it? Is it about some social issues like health insurance, education, or something else?
I've met it so many times, because we had in Mariupol, in Platform 2, we have this ongoing project, which for 7 years, it's called Dianom, and we just try to reflect on both Soviet Union and Ukraine is in Soviet Union, and decommunization, because we have a project, we have on national level, on official level, this decommunization process, which it's a number of laws that was that were launched in 2015 after the start of occupation, which on the legal level, on official level, they claim some, for example, symbols to be
totally banned and prohibited in public spaces. Yeah.
Yes, public spaces, for example, something like that. To rename the streets, it was all this big process started in 2015. But I mean that we worked with this theme so long that I've heard so many times, like you said, these people who are nostalgic. And in Mariupol, we had these people as well who were just wanted to. And I also asked them, what do you feel? What do you feel nostalgic about? And as a result of all my researches, I would say that they feel nostalgic about their youth. That's it. They feel nostalgic about being happy, and you are always happy when you are young, when you have childhood, when you have, like when you study and meet your first love and so on. But you don't reflect. They don't reflect. They don't realize that they miss their youth. They think that they miss the ice cream for 20 kopeek and so on, and that's it.
Asya, what do you say?
I think that I would agree with you, and I was, I was one of the people who were very critical about the decommunization process in Ukraine. But there is a funny thing about decommunization is that we renamed the streets, we renamed we renamed different streets, some villages, some cities, and this was one of the reasons why this invasion of Russia went, let's say, wrong, because they were simply not able to orientate in the new space with new. Yeah, this is the funny
also
joke.
Statues. We've got rid of statues and still are.
Yeah. But in order to answer about the question, for the question, what do people miss? I think that on the deeper level, people are miss. What was Soviet Union, on my opinion, is that like what you you're missing this feeling of being named, explained, and let's say put it in the order by someone.
Paternalism, yeah.
And this is very, very existential feeling. As long as you are not explained, you don't know who you are. As you are not named, you don't know who you are, what you need to do, where to move, how to act, and so on and so on. And this is the huge actually thing. And only I wouldn't say that even my generation, although I'm very critical to everything, but I think that, even generations after me will be able to actually identify the way or the different, ways how to move and who we are and how to act and so on and so on. And this was the good thing about decommunization, because it brought to the Ukrainian cultural community this very deep question, like, okay, Soviet past is not our past. But what we were doing during all these 80 years, we were sleeping. Like, this is what
That's
happened.
What we have to talk it, to think about it, to reflect on it. Yeah.
Yes,
There's no time.
and we actually had the time. I mean, like, there were a lot of. This
20 years we had.
This
but
was.
Now,
but now everything is different. I would say that decommunization is the first step, and process of decommunization gifted us extremely talented Ukrainian researchers, curators, thinkers who were thinking about this cultural reappropriation of the Soviet past. So we were like, we want to destroy everything that remains us about Soviet Union. For example, there are mosaics in this public space. And there were a bunch of extremely talented researchers that started to say, whoa, stop, please.
Yeah.
It's
not
not
also
only
your history.
Yeah, it's also our history. It's not only because they are cool and like beautiful and so on and so on. It is actually like, if you're starting to dig into the history of mosaics, you will find out that there were the Kiev school of this monumental art. And there were a lot of, for example, female artists acting in this. And this Kiev school, which worked in the Sofia Kievska, in the one of the main cathedral of Kiev, what they were doing, they were.
It was a great works of art. Yeah.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. But they were like decoding the Soviet language of art, and they were like putting in these very hidden symbols of Ukrainian art and Ukrainian national heritage. And what is the most important is because this was one of the only. It is uncomparable to Yugoslavia, and probably like artists from ex-Yugoslavia will not understand this, but. In Soviet Union, there was only one style in which you can work.
Of course.
And it was mainly related to the paintings. The paintings was the most,
we had it
thing.
For a couple of years after the war, and then at the beginning of 50s, it was over because Tito, the ex-Yugoslavian president, he broke up with Stalin, with Russians. So then everything changed after that. So politically and of course culturally speaking. So.
Yeah, and you had very vivid, art scene during Yugoslavian times. In Soviet Union, those mosaics was one of the official way for the artists to work and to get the access to the basic instruments of their work.
The only way, I'm sure.
Yeah, and still be more or less free with the artistic expression, just because art. Just because mosaics is not painting, they are using different possibilities they have.
I know a lot of people are already speaking a lot about it, about the so-called culture war, meaning that this terrible situation we have now in Ukraine is also had a lot to do with identity politics. So you, as I understand, your point was it's also about that this decommunization is also related to identity issues. Yeah.
Yes.
And was it the case? What do you say in the rest of so-called Eastern Europe, like Moldova, Belarus, Russia itself, or no?
There is a very interesting point.
For different reasons, of course.
For different reasons, there is a very interesting point. Is that I've heard it a couple of days ago that Ukraine, Belarus, Moldova, all of the republics of ex-Soviet Union during the fall, when Soviet Union was falling apart, those republics were fighting for their national recognition and freedom. Russia was fighting to destroy the not totalitarian but authoritarian regime, and this was the difference. So we were fighting for national liberation; they were fighting their regime, and this is why this was very interesting turning point that we are now, we Ukrainians are on the one, let's say, spot on the road. Russians are totally different. We are this is why we cannot communicate to each other, because we simply speaking about different things. They don't understand us, and we don't understand them. To be honest,
the terminology, vocabulary we have, they don't have the terms or even the concept, the ideas that we operate. When the process of liberation, of which Asja spoke, has given us, we fought and we are fighting for democracy with all our bare hands, because we know what is democracy, because we fight for it, personally, every Ukrainian now. Whereas there is nothing like that happened in Russia, for example. So, or a totally different situation happened in Belarus. They were started to trying, and and then it was oppressed. So, and this really significantly impacts the way, the cultural way, the culture, the way of thinking, the way of, of everything, of interpreting things.
Yeah, but when you say the terms, and you're also apart other things, you're also an activist, as we already said. So, what do you say? How can we communicate these terms like democracy,
with whom?
European values, with everybody? Because right now, I'm not speaking about Ukraine. No. I mean in general, because we see that we live in an era of populism. So those terms like human rights, women's position in society, democracy, those terms lost their meaning to some extent. Yeah, and in this era of populism, it's very hard to communicate with so-called ordinary people, and to explain not just what it is about, but also why it is important. Because personally, I think there's those European values is all we have, because the alternative is hate speech or things like that. So which we don't want. Yeah, but still I see how hard it is to communicate those values. What's your experience?
I would say that
because when you say democracy, to some people they can mock about it, because they can tell us, well, in the name of democracy people were killed, like in the name of Christianity people were killed. So what does it mean when you say democracy? So it can be very, very delicate. Yeah.
You know that since the start of Russian invasion to Ukraine, I am based in Ukraine, although I'm relocated obviously from Mariupol, but I really oftentimes come to Europe, to all kinds of Europe, Western,
Balkans,
Eastern, Southern, Eastern, and so on. Northern, came to Europe, so to some events to actually talk and to talk about culture, about identity, about history, about
And what do you see?
activism. And what yet? And this year has been like a lot of exchange in cultural democracy, cultural diplomacy. Sorry. And this your question is really very acute for me, because how to communicate, for in my case, with Europeans, with what Europeans? Okay, Western, Northern, whatever, not us. Like how to communicate? Because this year I really found myself stumbled in helplessness of how to communicate people that what is happening in Ukraine. It's really really hard with. I would also come to the stereotypes with Western Europe, from Eastern to Western Europe, because the whole concept of democracy that was integral for Europe, for European values. Now it's a little bit. It's. I would not say that this is populistic time, but it's the time of total fundamental changes in understanding. Okay, if there is democracy, how do you value it? If it's your value, how do you prove me that you value democracy? I can prove you. I can die for it. I can be killed for it, and I literally can be killed for it, and I will still go there and fight for it. This is like this. And Western Europeans, it's like so hard for them to comprehend it, because they were born in already democratic society.
So they are taking it for granted.
Yes, they're taking it for granted. I hate this they, them, us.
Yeah.
But still, there are people who were born in democracy who never faced any problems in terms of violating democracy. And it's just something they have. And why are you being so cruel? I'm not cruel. I'm fighting for democracy. And you probably also, Yugoslavian club, can also relate to this. So this is something we have to think about, that we are fighting for the fighting. We are facing these changes.
I mean, you mentioned this research on women's artists. I think I consider myself to be a feminist, because I think it's still, unfortunately, it's still a very hot issue. If we look at America, for example, right now, we see that women are not, in some states, in some countries, women are not allowed to have an abortion. So it's a process we are witnessing. A very strange one, because if we had in 60s, for example, America was an important country, sending this message to the rest of the world, being very democratic and fighting for women's or black people rights or gay rights. And now we see how this process is going backwards. So this is just one of the proofs about how how this situation we have right now is very delicate. But what about the needs of cultural people in Ukraine right now? As we said, now it's about surviving, and of course you also put it beautifully at the beginning when you said you needed a pause to reflect, to feel safe, But what about after the war is over? What do you think about it? Do you think people think about it, or it's just now, they're thinking about the survival?
Because there was a huge conference in Warsaw a couple of weeks ago regarding, dedicated exactly to this question, what will be next?
Yeah, because I think it's highly important.
Sure.
That's also something which our experience are telling us. And we learned that that it's not just about the fight and the success after this fight. It's also about what's going after.
What's going on, yeah. I just realized that I come from the easternmost city of the easternmost country of Eastern Europe.
Yes.
Wow, it sounds okay.
Yeah, so I'm the most eastern here at all, because
As it only could be.
is the easternmost point on Ukraine, which is the easternmost part of Yeah, from this perspective, the word wasplaining sounds even, more, because wasplaining was something that you've mentioned, like when someone tells you, but you have to, to do all this or this. What's next? Actually, this is the question, not new for me personally, because I've lost my home in 2014.
No, I mean, not for you personally. I mean,
but
as a society, as a cultural system.
Yes. And this question I asked for myself, because for me, the war is long. It's from 2014. And at some point, I started thinking about it. Okay, we want to end. We want everything, the war to end. We want peace. And this is everything we can think about. But actually, what's next? Okay, here is your peace. Now what? And I was like, when I started thinking about, I don't know what's next. Then we have to deal with so much. With first of all, I'm not really. I don't have doubt that we will rebuild, renovate, reconstruct.
I'm not speaking about it.
Of course, it's not about it, but because it's also huge. Destruction is huge, so we have to think about it. But of course, it's about people. It's about relations. It's about building something with the territories that are now temporarily occupied, with people with them. It's first problem that we will be facing, and then if you ask about some relations with other countries, then I'm sure that we will not be able to have anything in common with Russia for a long time. That's
Asya?
for sure.
I think I was thinking about it a lot, and I don't know what will happen, but I can tell you what I would like to happen. First of all, for sure we will have to deal with the fact that people who were part of Ukrainian art community will be displaced. It's like, for sure, there will be a certain number of people who will not come back. And also another question related to this is that this is something that they are not writing in books about the war, is that war is super complicated, multi-level experience, and war for each and every one is different. And first of all, I guess we would need to face this fact and somehow put in peace, like not to organize this war of experiences, like who suffered the most, who did, who made the biggest impact, who helped the most, and so on and so on and so on. So this will be the period of time of like building everything from the scratch, but not only buildings or bridges, but actually building their identity from the scratch. I really would like for if my country will find my country by herself will find its own place on the world map, and this place will be not mediated by someone else, but it's like because we are here because we know who are our neighbors, which relationships we have with our neighbors. Those are equal relationships we like, and so on and so on. Mostly it's like things like this. You will need to invent yourself from the very scratch, but this is
exactly.
And this is the huge challenge. But as I mentioned in the beginning, this is a huge bonus, you can
Do
actually do
whatever.
whatever you want, and then deal with the consequences of your actions.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, because I was recently, a month ago or so, I was invited by my Polish and my French colleagues to participate in a program, in a project. We went to Lublin in eastern Poland to meet with Ukrainian cultural operators, artists, and I learned that they don't really think about this.
Future.
What is coming? Yeah. Apart from, of course, they are thinking about future in terms of, as you said, Diana, reconstructing about the infrastructure, cultural infrastructure, so on, which is of course highly important. But to me, I think it's even more important to think about all those topics we are speaking about right now, and it's. In a way, it's easier just to rebuild a building than to rebuild a narrative, identity, and to deal with these issues.
But I think it's okay if someone doesn't feel like thinking forward from some Ukrainians. It's totally understandable if you
Of
are
course
in
it
a
is.
survival mode, in a survival horror under
that's
the rocket attack or without
most important.
electricity, and even your body turns to different, like to a machine of survival.
Yeah.
So, and it's a luxury to think forward, to think strategically. Sometimes it's a luxury. So it's okay that everyone
For
will
now,
still come to that moment when they will have to face the future.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Asja, very much. Thank you, Diana, very much for being with us, and see you soon in February, I hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, see you in Belgrade.
Yes,
Thanks.
thank you, Dimitrije.
Thank you.